Admiral Jellico took away Picard's Star Trek command twice. Star Trek Prodigy revealed that Admiral Edward Jellico, Ronnie Cox, took Admiral Jean-Luc Picard, Patrick Stewart, off of the Romulan rescue mission. But this was not the first time Jellico relieved Picard of his command. As captain of the USS Enterprise D on Star Trek: The Next Generation, Picard led his crew with confidence and compassion, and they eventually became like a family. Throughout TNG's 7 seasons, Starfleet admirals and captains occasionally visited the Enterprise, often coming into conflict with the crew when their command styles were vastly different from Picard's. With his strict adherence to the rules and regulations of Starfleet, Edward Jellico was not the most sympathetic of Star Trek captains. Star Trek Prodigy revealed that Jellico kept these traits into his admiralty, and Admiral Catherine Janeway, Kate Mulgrew, like Picard, didn't always agree with Jellico's way of doing things. Jellico kept checking up on Janeway throughout Star Trek Prodigy's 2 seasons, but she found ways to circumvent his by-the-book commands. Star Trek Prodigy Season 2 ended with the synth attack on Mars that had first been revealed in Star Trek Picard, filling in gaps in the Star Trek timeline. Captain Jellico took away Picard's command in Star Trek TNG in the Star Trek The Next Generation Season 6 two-parter, Chain of Command. Captain Jellico takes over command of the USS Enterprise D when Captain Picard must go on a covert mission. Jellico's command style contrasts sharply with Picard's and immediately gets under the skin of Commander William Riker, Jonathan Frakes. When Picard is captured by the Cardassians, Jellico refuses to acknowledge that Picard was on an official Starfleet mission, which would grant him the rights of a prisoner of war rather than a terrorist. Riker argues with Jellico, accusing him of sacrificing Captain Picard's life as a negotiating tactic. Jellico then relieves Riker of duty, assigning LT Commander Data, Brent Spiner, as his new first officer. Later, Jellico seeks out Riker's help to pilot a shuttlecraft and lay a minefield trap for the Cardassians. Jellico and Riker criticize one another, but Riker agrees to help. Throughout all of these events on the Enterprise, the Cardassian Gomidrid, David Warner, was brutally interrogating and torturing Captain Picard. Despite very nearly breaking in the end, Picard manages to hold out just long enough to be rescued. Jellico does not come across as particularly likable in Star Trek: The Next Generation's Chain of Command, but he ultimately succeeds in thwarting the Cardassians' plans and rescuing Picard. Admiral Jellico relieved Picard of his Romulan rescue mission in Star Trek Prodigy. In Star Trek Prodigy's Season 2 finale, Dal-Rel, Brett Gray, and his friends at Starfleet Academy witnessed the news coverage of the synth attack on Mars. In a gathering of Starfleet officials, Admiral Jellico shares the unfortunate news that not only would Starfleet stop the Romulan evacuation projects, but they would also be pulling back from exploration entirely. Jellico says that Admiral Picard did not take this news well, implying Jellico himself was the one who delivered the news to Jean-Luc. Star Trek Picard revealed that Picard resigned from Starfleet in protest after the cancellation of the Romulan rescue mission. Considering Wesley Crusher, Will Wheaton, and his traveler powers were a big part of Star Trek Prodigy Season 2, it's not surprising the season couldn't end without mentioning Jean-Luc Picard. Like Picard, Janeway commanded with compassion first, putting the safety of her crew members above even her own. These captains did not leave crew members behind, and that sometimes meant bending or even breaking the rules of Starfleet, a sentiment Admiral Jellico directly opposed. Jellico's return in Star Trek Prodigy served as a nice callback to Star Trek: The Next Generation and further connected Prodigy to the greater Star Trek universe. Batgirl, Catwoman, and Riddler were all in 1960s Star Trek. The actors who portrayed Batgirl, Catwoman, and the Riddler in the 1960s Batman television series also appeared in Star Trek: The Original Series. Batman and TOS both began in 1966 and appealed to similar audiences, so it's not surprising that several actors popped up on these two shows. With its campy, humorous tone, the 1960s Batman was very different from most modern adaptations featuring the Caped Crusader. As Batman, Adam West, and Robin, Burt Ward, defended Gotham City, they used ridiculously named gadgets to take on villains, and comic book words like "pow" and "bam" popped up on the screen during fight scenes. Although Star Trek: The Original Series had its campy moments, its tone was much less tongue-in-cheek than that of Batman. Following the adventures of Captain James T. Kirk, William Shatner, and the USS Enterprise, Star Trek told more serious stories with a moral lesson. Many actors appeared in minor roles across both shows, but Yvonne Craig, Julie Newmar, and Frank Gorshin all played significant roles in Batman and made particularly memorable guest stars on Star Trek. Captain Kirk, Mr. Spock, Leonard Nimoy, and Dr. Leonard McCoy, DeForest Kelley, may have been the heart of Star Trek TOS, but the new and often alien characters they encountered each week kept things interesting. Batgirl Yvonne Craig played Marta in Star Trek in Batman. Yvonne Craig portrayed Batgirl aka Barbara Gordon, the daughter of Gotham City Police Commissioner Gordon, Neil Hamilton. While not fighting crime alongside Batman and Robin, Barbara worked as a librarian. The character of Barbara Gordon was created as a joint effort between the executive producer of Batman, William Dozier, and several creators at DC Comics. She made her comic book debut in January 1967 and her television debut in the Season 3 premiere of Batman that same year. Craig appeared in 26 episodes of Batman from September 1967 through March 1968, and she did most of her own stunts. The Star Trek, the original series Season 3 episode, Whom Gods Destroy, begins with Captain Kirk and the Starship Enterprise arriving at a Federation psychiatric facility, only to find that they have been lured there by the escaped patients. Led by Garth of Izar, Steve Innit, these patients imprison Kirk and Spock and attempt to take over the Enterprise. Yvonne Craig portrays Marta, an Orion woman who was being held as one of the patients at the facility. Marta attempts to seduce Kirk and eventually tries to kill him before Spock subdues her. Garth later kills Marta as a demonstration of his own power. Catwoman Julie Newmar played Eileen in Star Trek. Julie Newmar portrayed the villainous Catwoman in 13 episodes of Batman across the show's first 2 seasons. A skilled jewel thief and cat burglar, Catwoman often flirted with Batman, trying to coax him to join her. But despite their complicated love-slash-hate relationship, Batman always chose to remain on the side of the crime fighters. Over the course of her career, Newmar starred in numerous films, television shows, and theatrical performances. She won a Tony Award for Best Featured Actress in a play for portraying Katrin Sveg in the 1958 Broadway production of The Marriage Go Round. In the Star Trek, the original series episode, Friday's Child, the USS Enterprise visits Capella 4 to negotiate a mining contract only to find a Klingon representative already present. The Capellan leader, Akar, Ben Gage, appears ready to side with the Federation, but then fighting breaks out among the Capellans. Julie Newmar plays Eileen, Akar's pregnant wife who must flee after her husband is killed in the melee. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy save Eileen and escape to the hills, where McCoy eventually persuades her to allow him to help with her delivery. She later names her newborn son Leonard James Akar and takes over as her son's regent. Riddler Frank Gorshin played Bell in Star Trek. Frank Gorshin portrayed the Riddler in 10 episodes of Batman in the 1966 film, earning an Emmy nomination for the role. Frank Gorshin's take on the Riddler helped make the puzzling criminal mastermind one of Batman's most iconic villains. Because he disliked the Riddler's unitard costume from the Batman comics, Gorshin helped create the question mark-covered green business suit and bowler hat look, which eventually made its way back